What's going on, folks? This is Mr. Colin on the War, and this is going to be my review of the Glock 30 SF chambered in 45 ACP. The gun has a really balanced look to it. It doesn't seem like it's going to be too front heavy or too back heavy. It just works. Everything just is in perfect proportion to the rest of the gun. I mean, of course, besides that, it's just a Glock. It looks like a Glock. Everything about it screams Glock, except for the proportions. I think the proportions of this gun make it work. The gun is very robust. It has a very robust look to it for a concealed carry weapon. And to some that may be a negative in other aspects of concealed carry, but from a look standpoint, it makes this gun look really solid and just really a good gun to look at. And then when you have the short frame here, what it does is it doesn't make the gun look overly intimidating in terms of how beefy the grip is, because it does have a smaller or a better feeling grip than your regular Glock 30. Now, here's where this gun shines. With my old Glock 30, it was beefy. It was basically the same size grip as the regular Glock 21, and that's a big gun. The only difference between the Glock 30 and the Glock 21 was the fact that since this was a shorter grip, the palm swell starts a lot earlier on the gun, much like the 19 and the 17. Though they are the same grip, the palm swell starts a lot sooner, but then ends shortly on the compact size guns. That's why the Glock 17 feels so much better in hand than the Glock 19. The same thing can be said about the Glock 21. With the Glock 21 and the Glock 30, the Glock 21's grip is extended more. And so because of this extension, it allows the gun to be a little bit more thinner further throughout the actual palm swell. On the Glock 30, it starts sooner and then ends sooner. So what ends up happening is you end up with a situation where you have this part, the palm swell, the most extreme part of the palm swell, dead set in the middle of your hand. So that makes the gun feel a lot thicker than it really is compared to, say, the Glock 21. But with the SF, what they've done is they've shortened the frame from here to here. So from here to here is shorter on the Glock SF than it is on a regular Glock 30. Now what that allows for is basically to get a better purchase around the gun. So instead of my hand stopping here on a regular Glock 30, it would stop about right there. And you don't notice it just by looking at it. But when you pick it up and you feel it in hand, you really notice it throughout here. Because around here it's about the same, but up here towards this first finger groove, you really notice it, because you get a better grip around this area and you get a better purchase along the top here. That in and of itself makes this Glock 30 a winner. And simply because where the Glock 30 was just this monster that you couldn't fit in your hand, this part of the gun now, the grip and the circumference is perfect and it's dead on. Now, along with the ergonomics on this gun, you have this base plate here. This is an extended base plate, which basically serves as a place for you to put your pinky finger. Now, in my mind, you don't get any added advantage on this. Well, you do. You get an extra round, more or less, because the flush plate you have 9, with this extended plate you have 10 rounds. I have heard some people have some issues with it pinching the pinky finger. Now, I never ran into those issues, but I have heard of it. Enough so that, people are writing about it. But I will say from an ergonomic standpoint that this gun works. It is big, it isn't small. It isn't as small as the 19 or the 17, but it is smaller than the regular basic Generation 3 Glock 21s and Generation 3 Glock 30s. The SF frame is a big difference. You notice it. It isn't marginal and something that needs to be tossed to the wind like some people like to make others think. This gun is noticeably improved in the ergonomic department. And the gun, just like all Glocks, sits in your hand, you get a high bore access, and it just works. This exaggerated palm swell does dig into your hand a little bit, but the same thing goes for the 30. But other than that, in-hand ergonomics are dead on. All right, I'm gonna talk about the trigger really quickly, simply because you've seen one Glock trigger, you've seen them all. If you haven't done anything to it and it's stock, there's really not much to really say about it. It's your basic 5.5 pound trigger pull, and it breaks. Now, I will say this though, on this particular gun, and I think it may just be unique to this particular firearm, the reset is a bit shorter, I've noticed. This is the stock trigger. There hasn't been a ghost trigger or anything like that put in it, but it just feels a little bit better. And I have noticed that along the actual Glock range, that just some individual guns triggers will feel a lot better than some other ones, even though they're both new. But for the most part, this is your basic Glock trigger, 5.5 pound trigger pull with the audible and tactile reset and a break. Now, here's another thing that I think probably should go into the ergonomics department. But what I will say about this is, with the SF, you do get a better purchase on the trigger. It gives you a little leeway as far as what you want to do. Now, for most people with the regular 30s, what ends up happening is you can't get a good enough grip to get enough of your finger on the trigger. And for some people, that's a problem. For me, it wasn't too much of an issue, but with the SF, it does allow you to get a better purchase on the actual trigger and shoot the gun the way it needs to be shot. This gun is, to me, the perfect dual purpose gun. And what I mean by that is this. Yes, it is a compact gun. It's smaller in size and shape compared to a full-size gun. But the thing about this gun that you get, that you don't get in a lot of guns, is one, capacity. The capacity on this gun is 10 rounds of 45. There are a number of 1911s, subcompact or 3-inch barrel 1911s that are for concealed carry, and you only get 7 rounds. Period. That's it. And you're going to deal with the same weight, you're going to deal with the same size, and maybe a little bit slimmer, but more or less you're only getting 7 rounds of 45. Not to mention you have to deal with the exaggerated length of the actual grip. With the Glock 30, yes, you have basically a grip that length that's almost the size of the 19, but guess what? You can easily get a flush plate, add a flush plate to this gun, and now you have 9 rounds. Not only that, so now you're dealing with a gun that size and lengthwise, it is the same size as the Glock 26. Now it's bigger, it's fatter, but as far as the grip frame is concerned, it's in essence the same size as the 26. So this is in essence a compact concealed carry 45 with 9 rounds of 45. I don't think you can really beat that. Now, of course, there are other added advantages of, say, a 1911 where you get the trigger of the 1911 and the use and whatnot, and it is prettier. But for the most part, from a capacity standpoint, this gun is excellent. You get 10 rounds of 45. 10. I just don't think that you can do any better than that. And not to mention, you have the situation with Glocks where you can interchange the magazines. So I could take a Glock 21 magazine, dump it in here, and guess what? Now I have a home defense weapon in 45. It just works. And not to mention, besides all of that, you also get a Picatinny rail. So if you wanted to add a home defense light, laser, or whatever you can think of, it's there. And I just don't think that you can really knock how great of a gun this gun really is. It just works. The gun is heavy. Let's just be very clear about that. This gun is heavy. When you load it up at 10 rounds of 45, that does come with a cost, and that's weight. So you're gonna have to run a good belt, a good holster, your setup just is gonna have to be on point to run this gun. But for the most part, it works. Now you do get your standard U-dot sights, which I actually abhor. I cannot stand these sights at all. But they're on the gun, they're usable, they're manageable. You can do whatever you need to do with them. But usually these are gonna be the first thing to go. And that's the case with a lot of people. So, but other than that, man, I just really have to say, I can't go on and on more about this gun. And then on top of that, if you talk to anyone who's ever owned a Glock 30, or not even somebody who owns a Glock 30, who's just into Glocks in general, there's something about the Glock 30, there's a bit of a mystique about it, that you can't explain it, but you just want it. You really don't have a purpose. Your main carry could be a 19, you could be a 9mm guy. And for some reason, for whatever reason, which I cannot describe at this point, you want this gun. You just do. You just feel like it's a gun that you need to have in your repertoire, something that you can carry. I can carry my Glock 21 on a number of occasions and not need to get this gun. But for some reason, you just want it. I don't know why. Maybe it's the idea of a compact 45 with 10 rounds in it, or what. But you just want the gun for whatever reason. And I have to say, that to me, it speaks volumes about this gun. And it just does. But at the end of the day, yes, it's still a Glock, of course. But man, this is just something, I keep repeating it and I'm sorry, but there's just something about it that just works. Now, some people who aren't really into Glocks, they probably won't get it and they'll think I'm crazy. But, and I don't blame you, but it just the gun works, and it's a great gun for its size and its shape, and I can't get over the proportions. I love the proportions on this gun. You get a full-size grip. If you want to drop a flush plate, you can drop the flush plate and have it more compact and more concealable. And it's 10 rounds of 45. I didn't even add the +1. So now you're running around with 11 rounds of 45 in a compact weapon that's actually smaller than the 19 from a length standpoint and a height standpoint. How do you beat that? You don't. So that's my take on the Glock 30. Like I said, it is still just a Glock. You get the reliability and all that. And as soon as I get a chance, I'll do a shooting review on it. But I'll tell you right now, this gun is a soft shooter. I shoot better with the Glock 30 than I do with the Glock 21. I don't know why, but I do. And it is a soft, accurate shooter. So with that being said, this is Mr. Coleon Noir.